ladies and gentlemen, let me try to summarize a little bit of what's happened here at the Governor's Ag Conference, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. You know, I've tried to share with the ag leaders who are here today and been here the last day and a half. We're off to a fantastic start in 2014. We're now the #1 cattle feeding state in America. This week we also received the Governor's Cup for having the most economic development projects per capita all across Nebraska, and that starts with agriculture. This industry is doing very well, but we can't be satisfied with past achievements. We've got to continue to move forward. We have some challenges out there, we know that. #1, I would suggest to you in talking with our farmers and ranchers, is the property tax issue. We need to lower property taxes in the state. We need to do the same for income taxes to help small businesses. So I've had quite a few conversations with ag leaders here at the conference about the need for responsible and meaningful property and income tax relief. That's going to be a huge issue in the remaining 3 weeks of the legislative session. There are two parts to it when we talk about property tax relief. The first is we need to provide additional funding for the property tax relief credit program. The Appropriations Committee has put in about $25 million. That's about half of what they should be doing. It should be about $50 million or more. Secondly, we support the Farm Bureau and the Cattlemen proposal to lower ag land valuations from 75% to 65%. At the same time, we need income tax relief in the state. That's critical for our small businesses and middle-class families. So it's a combination of those two things that are critical. I've heard a lot about. The other issue is water. Will always continue to be an issue in our state. We're the #1 irrigated state in America. It's the foundation of agriculture, which is the #1 industry in this state. The final thing I would just mention, going back to the cattle feeding, we're very, very fortunate. We have what everybody describes, Director Ibaugh and others, the golden triangle. Third leading corn producer, second leading ethanol producer, the #1 cattle feeding industry in America. Those three things go together and allow us to continue to move forward. Greg, you want to come up? Any additional thoughts about what's occurred? Otherwise, we'll go to questions.
I would just offer that, as we celebrate our success with our new rating as the #1 cattle feeding state in the nation, we also are looking forward to the opportunities to continue to grow our livestock industry, our dairy, pork, and poultry dimensions of that livestock industry, to offer opportunities for youth to return home to farms. If a young person wants to return home to his community and he rents a piece of ground out from a current farmer, to be able to return, that really doesn't help that community. If the young person comes home and his family adds a livestock operation, we grow the productivity of that community. And so that really gives us an opportunity to be able to layer up using our current resources, our current commodity mix, leverage that golden triangle, and expand some other areas of our livestock industries.
Let me introduce one other speaker. Just finished speaking to the conference. Todd Beckers, the CEO of one of the leading ethanol producers in our state and America. And again, Todd, we've been sharing with him the importance and the cooperation needed between the corn industry, the ethanol industry, and now the fact we're the #1 cattle feeding state in America. And we'd just like to ask you to share a few words with him, and then we'll take questions.
So today what I was speaking about is really the success story for ethanol and in the state of Nebraska, and the impact it's had on Nebraska's economy as well as our national economy. Ethanol today is about a 2 billion gallon industry, so it's one of the largest producing states in the world. And also we produce several million tons of livestock feed as well. So the impact of ethanol in the state on just jobs, but also tax revenue, on wages, on our impact for also the combination when we talk about corn and livestock and ethanol living together. We produce a high quality animal feed that we sell back into the livestock industry. So overall we think that it's an extremely important part of Nebraska's economy. We are very excited about the future. We think that we have great opportunities ahead of us in the state, and we're looking forward to working with the governor and his team.
Todd, thank you very much. So, hey, got a leading ethanol producer, the director of agriculture, and just me on the way out. So whatever you want to ask us, go right ahead.
Todd, as far as the renewable fuel standard and the decision that we're waiting from EPA on that, any thoughts on where that could be headed or what you hope to see?
Yeah, you know, when the first thing came out, it was certainly the first pass at the standard, and that was in that 13 billion gallon range. And I think what the EPA has realized since then is that some of the data and some of the information that they were using to make this decision maybe wasn't 100% correct. And when we look at overall gas demand in the United States, it actually hasn't continued to go down. It's actually increasing this year. So when we look at the numbers of just a base 10% blend in the United States, at 13 billion, that means gas demand is 130 billion. When in fact it's running between 135 and 140 billion, so you're actually not mandating a 10% use of ethanol. And so we think that when the EPA comes back out and gives us the final ruling, which we don't know that will come before spring because they have 15,000 comments that they're going through, we think we'll have at least some positive adjustment to those numbers to kind of reflect absolute real gas demand. And so we've made our argument to the Economic Council in the White House and the EPA and the USDA, and we've got broad support, and I think that some of those arguments, especially around gas demand, is really what's going to drive the decision. Because what a lot of people thought is as gas demand continues to go down, how could you mandate 10% ethanol in the fuel supply when realizing that with the economy getting better, gas demand has stopped going down, is actually going back up a little bit. So we think that we think it'll be a positive ruling in our favor. We don't think we'll get everything back, but we do think we're going to make some progress.
What impact will that have on your business if they don't adjust it back upwards, or even if it's not back up to the level that it was supposed to be?
You know, so from our standpoint, we advocated getting rid of the tax credit, and I would say at some point in the future, the mandate will probably go away as well. I'm not sure in the next 5 or 10 years or when that's going to happen. The impact on the industry is actually very interesting because today with the U.S. producing a record corn crop, you've seen corn prices come down, which has driven ethanol prices down, and now we're much more competitive globally as a molecule. In fact, we're the cheapest molecule in the fuel tank today, by far, even on a BTU adjusted standpoint. So, well, it's most interesting is actually since the government announced the new standard, the ethanol industry has actually flourished. We have great demand globally, we have great demand domestically. We can't actually keep up with all the demand that we have. So it's one of those law of unintended consequences, but with cheap corn prices in the United States again, and that's allowing us to, and great demand for the animal feed we produce at our plants in Nebraska, not just domestically but globally. We're getting great opportunities to sell our ethanol with a great demand source. So quite frankly, the impact since then has been actually opposite what people thought, and the industry is in great shape. But I think overall, you have to have some policy because in order to continue to draw investments in states like Nebraska on new technologies, there has to be some base policy because the oil coalition is so strong that their goal is to stop these policies from happening because every 1% of the fuel tank that we get is about a $3 billion loss to them in marginal profit. So that's what we're fighting against. Yes.
Last week, Ag Secretary Vilsack announced that USDA is going to take a trade mission over to China, and with the primary focus on renewable fuels. And I would assume that's also with the byproducts and everything.
Yeah.
All three of you have been great promoters of Nebraska products overseas. Who wants to comment on, will Nebraska play a role in this, and what do you think might come of it?
Well, I'll quickly comment. So yeah, the Secretary has announced a trade mission that's going to happen. We're putting it together right now as an industry. If you think about China and they buy corn from us, they buy distillers from us, and we do better sometimes when we send end products and finished products there. It's actually, from my standpoint, it's better for the Nebraska economy to have strong demand globally for the value-added product as well as the raw material. And so we're very excited about it. Obviously, it's an insatiable demand. We did our first shipment, not the industry shipped in November of last year. I'm very confident they like the product. They produce a lot of ethanol over there today. And I think if we could find the pathway that allows U.S. ethanol to flow over there, it's a great thing for Nebraska and the industry. It's had great impacts.
Let me just add a couple things, particularly I hope you caught what he said. We're shipping distiller grains to China. Nebraska distiller grains to China. That just goes to show you how important these industries are. Secondly, I've been to China twice. Last time we announced we were opening a trade office there in Shanghai. The other thing that always amazes you about China, there are 125 cities over there who have more than 1 million people. They need Nebraska beef, corn, soybeans, you go right down the list, and we're gonna try and help accommodate them. Specific on Secretary Vilsack's trip, I don't know all the details, but we compete in a global marketplace. I don't think there is a community in Nebraska, and I've been to practically every one of them. You go into a small community, even under 2,000 people, you will find small businesses who are shipping products all over the world. And so again, because of agriculture, we understand the global marketplace. We know we have to have the best products at a reasonable price to compete, and we're doing that. Great.
Well, over the past year on the current efforts that the governor has asked the department to take part in China and other countries, ethanol and the byproducts of the ethanol industry are always part of our conversation when we're talking about exports. You know, the Secretary's trade mission, we're taking a look at that. It could offer some different avenues that might not be doors that we can open ourselves, but that's we need to work with the industry and, you know, see what they're going to put together, and then, you know, we'll decide whether or not it's an appropriate investment of our time, effort, and money.
Other questions while you have the three of us here?
How do the recent issues in Ukraine directly affect Nebraska agriculture?
Say that again.
How do the recent issues in Ukraine directly affect Nebraska agriculture?
You know, I don't know if I have the answer to that one for you. I will say in a broader picture, I'm just concerned about what's going on in the world, and I'm very concerned, how does the United States make sure that people understand our position of strength? Because right now I'm not sure they see it that way. Greg?
That's a really tough
I
question.
know.
You know, I think that foreign policy decisions around the world impact Nebraska agriculture every day. The Ukraine is an important area of crop production. They were a developing competitor for us, the United States, as well as Nebraska, in commodity markets. So this instability changes that up. You've noticed our corn prices have crept up a little bit over the last few days because of that instability. You know, today Russia opened to U.S. pork, and you know you know, how does that play into the whole bilateral tensions that have developed over that too? So there's so many layers with foreign policy, but you know, it definitely has had an impact short term on our corn market, but it'll also have a long term impact depending on how the peninsula gets that issue over who's going to control that gets sorted out. That's Russia's port out of the Black Sea, so that's very important for them for shipping goods in to Russia as well as out of Russia.
All right, we can take a couple more questions before we've got to get inside for the luncheon.
Mr. Baker discussed how there's this big demand for ethanol and we're shipping it overseas, but I know in your discussion in the ballroom you were saying that is it the 48th user of ethanol blends? What can the state of Nebraska do to sort of grow our use of ethanol, and how important is that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's basically continuing to educate the consumer. It's continuing to drive good policy in the state. It's support from Lincoln, which we've always had. I mean, we have a great opportunity around expanded blends, which we need to take advantage of. And we need to look at policies around that as well. I think that there's still, obviously, a lot of the gas demand still is from people that drive through Nebraska. And when you drive up to a pump in Nebraska, you still have choice between E0 and E10. And now with some of the expanded blends, but if in the state of Minnesota, you don't have that choice. Really across the state, retailers have adopted E10 as their main product. So we just have work to do with the consumer, and we have got to make sure that and Big Oil is focusing on this. I mean, they see the opportunity, they see an opening when they see signs of ethanol-free gas in Omaha or across the state. We've got to just do all we can to promote this as a product grown in Nebraska. We can be energy independent, as we talked about. We produce a lot more ethanol in the state than we use of gasoline, and we've just got to continue with good, hard programs that continue to promote this product.
All right. Anybody got a final question?
Any comment, anybody
Okay, go ahead.
You got any chance to read Dr. Reed's white paper of the university that was released this morning? Any comments on the kind of the next phase of this golden triangle livestock in Nebraska?
Well, first, Ken, I would say I haven't had a chance to read it. I caught about 2/3 of his briefing. But this is an important issue. Rural Nebraska wants to grow. One of the best ways to grow is to grow livestock development. So we need to take a serious look at this. Look what's happened with cattle feeding. This took years of work. Corn, ethanol, all the ag groups working together, and now we're the #1 cattle feeding state in America. There's more room for growth in terms of livestock development, and that's about rural Nebraska. That is about keeping young people involved in agriculture. I think the last 4 years in a row, the number of young people going to the University of Nebraska at the ag campus is growing every year. Well, in order to do that, you need opportunity. I've been a big promoter of education and jobs. Give our young people the very best education we can give them, and then create jobs to keep them right here in Nebraska. Rural Nebraska is always concerned about the brain drain. One way to stop it, increase livestock development. Great.
I guess I'm looking forward to the thoughtfulness that they put into putting the paper together to be able to open another level of the dialogue that we've been having about talking about livestock being rural development in Nebraska. And now we have some hard numbers, some hard scenarios about just what that economic impact could be with targeted goals for expansion. And so now I'm really looking forward to partnering with the industry, partnering with counties and communities to identify the right fit for them to be able to move forward and try to take advantage of some of what the university says is possible.
Todd, I don't know if you've seen Dr. Green's report, so we won't put you on the spot unless you want to.
No, I would just say though that most important, and I think the ethanol industry is a great example of that, is we brought home good high-paying jobs, and we're seeing educated students come back to Nebraska that said they would never come back, and they're getting close to the farm. And we have a lot of kids that come back to ethanol plants with their degree from either University of Nebraska or somewhere else. And the great thing is they get to work at the ethanol plant, but they get to go work on the family farm. And so now they have this good high-paying job in all these local communities, but they also get a chance to work on the farm as well. And we see that across all of our ethanol plants, and in fact, across the whole ethanol industry. It's really, and I think when we expand livestock production in the state over time, you'll see some of those things. If you have good high-paying jobs, there's great opportunities in rural communities, and you're seeing a lot of young people come back to that.
It's called value-added agriculture. Susan, I'll give you the last question.
HSUS just sent out a news release probably about 10 minutes ago that says...
My favorite friends.
I know. That says the state is undermining animal welfare and wasting taxpayer dollars.
You know, let me just respond to my friends at the Humane Society of the United States. Let me remind everybody in this room, and I'll say it to them, they're anti-agriculture. They're out to destroy the #1 industry in this state. We're not going to let it happen in this state. It's high time they start being honest with everybody about what they're really all about. Again, we will not be intimidated in Nebraska. I want to be very, very clear. We are very nice citizens in this state, but when it comes to the Humane Society of the United States, we will not be intimidated. As I've told them on many occasions, you want to come to Nebraska, if you want to fight, and we're not asking for it, but if you want to fight, we'll win that fight. And then I'll go everywhere in America and explain to everybody how we did it, because too many other states have caved into them. So, you know, I don't put much into when they issue a press release, to be quite honest. All right, we've got to go inside for the noon luncheon. Thank you very much. Hey, Todd, thanks.